Leonardo da Vinci. We all know the name, right? The artist behind the Mona Lisa? But the man himself was a complete mystery, and honestly, he kinda cultivated that. For centuries after he died, his greatest work wasn't his paintings. It was thousands of pages of personal notes that were totally hidden from the world. And these notebooks, well, they held the key to everything. Let's start with one of his own thoughts, which really unlocks his whole way of thinking.
This quote from Leonardo says it all. It was his lifelong mission, to understand everything. And to do that, he wrote down every single thought, every little discovery, in these notebooks that would eventually change the world. But first, they had to be found.
So, for 60 years after his death, all these revolutionary ideas were just lost. The story of how they were found is almost as incredible as the man who wrote them. It's a wild tale of pure chance and jaw-dropping discovery.
Okay, picture this. It's 1580. An Italian artist named Pompeo Leone is rummaging around for a little inspiration, and he stumbles on this massive collection of old papers. He buys them for cheap, but when he opens them up, he realizes he's holding the lost mind of a genius.
The stuff inside was just baffling. Every page was written backwards in a mirror script. You literally couldn't read it without a mirror. And inside, oh man, there were designs for helicopters and machine guns, stuff that was 400 years ahead of its time. Unbelievably detailed drawings of human anatomy from actual corpses, and there were even bloody fingerprints on the pages, as if he just finished a dissection and went right back to writing.
And this is the question that has haunted historians for centuries. Why would you go to such incredible lengths to hide your work? What was Leonardo so afraid of?
Well, the most common explanation, and it's one that makes a lot of sense, is pretty simple: survival. Leonardo was trying to protect himself from the most powerful and, frankly, dangerous institution of his time. You have to remember, in 16th century Italy, the church had absolute power. Any idea, any scientific discovery that contradicted the Bible wasn't just heresy, it was a potential death sentence.
This timeline really puts the danger into perspective. Leonardo himself was declared an enemy of the faith in 1513. Less than a century later, a guy named Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake for his scientific theories. And then, of course, Galileo was imprisoned just for saying the Earth revolves around the sun. Leonardo knew his anatomical drawings and his astronomical observations could get him killed. So the code, the secrecy, it all starts to make perfect sense.
But here's the twist. Fear, as powerful as it is only part of the answer. Because the real reason for Leonardo's secrecy wasn't just about survival. It was born from a lifetime of being an outcast. To really get the code, you have to get the man. And to do that, you have to go back to his childhood.
His entire way of thinking, his need for secrecy, his unique way of seeing the world, it was all shaped by being rejected from the very beginning.
This chart just shows how different his world was. Leonardo was illegitimate, so he was labeled a devil's child. He was left-handed, which back then was considered a sign of the devil. He was denied formal schooling, denied an inheritance, denied a real place in society. He was, in pretty much every way, an outsider.
So what happens when the world refuses to teach you? You learn to teach yourself. Denied books, he turned to the greatest book of all, nature. Observation became his language, and finding patterns became his alphabet. He wasn't just looking at the world, he was trying to look inside it.
And what he found there was a series of hidden codes, these universal laws that he realized governed absolutely everything in the natural world.
For example, one day, when he was just a boy, he was staring at a tree and had this incredible revelation. He realized a tree's main trunk is as thick as all of its branches combined. This is now called Leonardo's Rule, and it's a fundamental principle of network flow that applies to everything from how our arteries distribute blood to how the internet distributes data.
And this became his method, a pretty simple three-step process that was the engine for all his genius. He would observe something with this obsessive intensity, find the hidden pattern within it, and from that, he'd figure out a universal law.
He applied it to his art, too. He noticed that as things get farther away, they don't just get smaller, they lose contrast and shift towards the color blue. This is called atmospheric perspective. He didn't just see it, he understood the optical physics behind it and turned it into a fundamental rule of painting that artists still use today.
So here's the real takeaway. Leonardo was figuring out the laws of science before science even had a language to describe them. He was seeing physics and biology when the rest of the world was just seeing, a pretty landscape.
But this incredible ability to see the world's inner workings led to this profound and, honestly, disturbing conflict within his own soul. Because on one hand, you have Leonardo the pacifist. He was a vegetarian who loved animals so much he would buy caged birds just to set them free. And on the other hand, you have Leonardo the war engineer, the guy who designed some of the most terrifying weapons of mass destruction imaginable.
It's the central puzzle of his life. How could a man who so deeply cherished life also be a merchant of death? Was he a hero, or a villain, or something else entirely?
Which brings us to the final and most haunting mystery of all. This man, who arguably saw and understood more of the universe than anyone who had ever lived, at the end of his life, declared himself a failure. Why?
The answers to those questions are locked away in the second half of his notebooks, revealing a mind at war with itself, and a secret that could have changed the course of history. That story continues, and believe me, the code has not been fully broken.